Hello, hello. I'm Samaya, and on this channel, we binge films, TV shows, and books, and then yap about them. In this series, we will be covering every single Best Picture in Oscar history and doing what the voting members apparently weren't doing. I will be watching every single Best Picture nominee in Oscar history and deciding, did the winner really deserve that winner spot? Today, we will be covering the 1930 winner, The Broadway Melody. Just as a reminder, there are no strict rules for actual voting members, so I created my own for this series. I'll be using this rubric and rating the movie based on each category, which is numbered from 1 to 5, 1 being the worst and 5 being the best. I'll then add up this number and divide it by 5 in order to get a general 5-star rating. And if the total is too generous or less than generous than how I actually felt while watching the movie, I will be adding or docking some points when I give the final rating. Because ultimately, we rate movies based on how it made us feel, or in other words, based on the emotional impact, and the emotional baseline can be different for each person. But first, I'll be talking about the other nominees. So if you just want to skip to the winner, I'll put the timestamp here so you guys can fast forward. Okay, let's talk about Alibi. Alibi was released in 1929, starring Chester Morris as Chick Williams and Eleanor Griffith as Joan Manning Williams. It was directed by Roland West and released by Feature Productions. Alibi is a crime and drama film about a gangster who marries a policeman's daughter. When another policeman is murdered during a robbery, the gangster falls under suspicion, and the policeman will do anything to ensure his capture. For the literary element, I decided to rate it a 4. For the directing element, a 4. For the visual element, a 4. For the editing element, a 4. For the sound element, a 3. So I rated it a 3.8 technically, but let's just give it 3.5 stars. Overall, I surprisingly enjoyed this movie. I personally thought the person that made the movie as good as it was the undercover cop. I'm sorry, but his death scene got me. I was in tears. I was like... He was so funny. The undercover cop basically was a drunk person at the club. You kind of didn't know he was a cop until like the middle towards the end of the movie. He really didn't deserve to die at all. He was just doing his job and pretending to be drunk and being with girls. He was just living the life, you know what I mean, on a paycheck. William found out he was and that he may be pinning the crime of the other cop dying on him just because he kind of asked him to fake his alibi for him, not knowing that the undercover cop was an undercover cop. So in the moment, Chick was like, pow, pow, and killed him. He panicked. I really thought the death scene was well done. Not only were the shots creative, but the lighting was as well. There was this one line when Danny was dying. He said this line of, guys, it's getting hard to see. The lighting dimmed. So it was actually hard to see the cops who were by his side as he was dying, holding him to his last breath. I thought that was very in a way theater, but it was well incorporated into film, which some of the other movies failed to do, which we'll talk about later. I will say a couple critiques that I had. I did not like how it kept going back to this show, the Alibi event, which was the show in the film. Basically, it was dancers. They kept going back to it and showing off the legs of the dancers, and it was unnecessary. It didn't add to the plot at all. Maybe if they were showing the show to keep reminding the audience that's where Chick said he was, he didn't kill the other cop, blah blah blah, I guess. They kept on wanting to reiterate it, but it's why did you choose to show off the dancer's legs? And back then, showing ankle was scandalous. So it was a little bit odd. Also, this was the era of the first talkies or sound films. They were, still exploring with sound and also trying to figure out how to still have these creative shots within the means of getting good sound still. Before, they weren't bound by, oh, will you hear this horse on the street? Which would you hear someone walking past? Would you not hear someone walking? They didn't have to think about all that before. So now we're kind of in the era where like the creative shots are a little bit more stale because of the constraints of sound. And you could kind of see that in this movie and also all the other movies we'll talk about. But hey, like, you know, they had to start somewhere. So going back to like some of the shots though, they were constrained by sound. But in this film in particular, they still try to be really creative with some of their shots. For example, when the criminal was escaping, it was really cool. It was like an overhead shot, and like you kind of watch him like leap over to a building and fall into the abyss. I still wonder how they did that because that fall looked really steep. And like I said, back then, set safety was not a thing. So I wonder if he really fell really far because it was unless like maybe they had an illusion with the set piece to where it looked farther than it was, but you literally couldn't see him fall to the bottom. So I also thought it's kind of suspicious that the policeman's daughter fell for a criminal and she just didn't put two and two together. I thought that was like pretty flat writing. If you're gonna grow up with a policeman as a father, he's gonna like put thoughts into your head and you're gonna like observe things and absorb qualities from your father naturally. I just think it was kind of unrealistic for her to like have fallen for a criminal and not see any red flags and was kind of like with him until the end, up until like spoiler alert to where he was killed. And I also did not like how because the guy she chose was killed and was a criminal, the only one left for her was this dude she did not even like, but her dad approved and was a good guy because he was also a cop. He became her love interest. The movie literally ends with them walking off together, his hand on her shoulder. I was like, oh, it was giving a terrible message of always listen to your father. He's always right about your love interests. All because you don't romantically like a guy doesn't mean you shouldn't be with him. God forbid a girl likes a criminal. Like, I'm kidding. What I'm trying to say is I didn't like how it was basically undermining her choice. But the thing is, her choice was bad off the bat because her character was written so one-dimensional. It didn't take into account that her father is literally a police person. Also, another kind of critique, but also could just be me. I didn't really get the vibe that William actually committed the crime until I did my research. The writer or someone who was writing the descriptions of the film confirmed that William did kill the cop and that he was faking his alibi. I kind of interpret it more as like because William was a criminal that the cops wanted to pin this crime on him, especially since he was into the policeman's daughter. It didn't really give the vibe that he actually committed the crime. Even like at the end of the movie, you're still wondering if he actually did it. So I don't know if that was purposeful, but it had me like feeling bad for William until he killed Danny. Once he killed Danny, he committed a murder anyway. It makes you like wonder, did he actually commit the crime, or because of the suspicion from the cops caused him to just commit murder anyway because he's like, no matter what I do, they'll think I commit murder, so I might as well do it. Either way, murder is a murder. Would I recommend this movie? Surprisingly, yes. Like I said in my last video, I'm not into mob stories. I'm not really into like crime movies either, especially if it's male centered. But this one was surprisingly captivating. Moving on. In Old Arizona. In Old Arizona was released in 1928, starring Warner Baxter as the Cisco Kid, Edmund Lowe as Sergeant Mickey Dunn, and Dorothy Burgess as Tonya Maria. It was directed by Irving Cummings and Raoul Walsh and released by Fox. In Old Arizona is a Western film about a bandit of the Old West and an army sergeant who fall in love with the same woman. Enticed by the substantial award, though, the woman plans an ambush with the sergeant to capture the bandit once and for all. Sorry, guys. As you can tell, I really did not like this movie. For the literary element, I rated it a 2. For the directing element, a 2. For the visual element, I guess a 4. For the editing element, I guess a 4. For the sound element, I guess a 4. So for the final rating, 3.2 technically. But I did not like this movie at all. So let's give it a half a star. For those of you who don't know, by the way, I'm half black, half Puerto Rican. This is one of my biggest pet peeves, especially for older movies. I'll probably talk about this more when we get to West Side Story. But it's very, very annoying when white people, like pure white people, cosplay as Hispanic. It grinds my gears. And this one in particular, because the Cisco kid, the actor who played the Cisco kid, actually got me. I actually believed he was Hispanic, guys. Like, he got me. I was so mad. The actress who played Dorothy, though, she didn't fool me, not for 1 second. I hated her. I hate her. I'm not for bashing women, but she deserves to be bashed because where do I even begin? She is a white woman cosplaying a Hispanic woman. For some reason, the actress thought it would be fun to play into that stereotype that Hispanic women are overly sexual. It grinds my gears. So she would like put out her hip, over accentuate it. She would like do that thing where it like kind of like, I would say in actor terms, try to act like a snake. That was her character choice. And her hair, bro, you can just tell that woman has straight hair. And they try to tease the heck out of it to make it poofy and Hispanic. Just, and then her makeup, bro. I think they thickened her eyebrows, but like weirdly so. She just looked off. It was giving uncanny valley. When I saw her, I was like, I don't think she's Hispanic. And that's when I started Googling. Is this actress Hispanic? No. And I was like, well, the main character is, right? No. And what's crazy is when I was reading the descriptions, it was like, oh yeah, they tended to play Hispanic characters because of their dark details in their look. Don't piss me off. It's just so annoying because Hispanic people come in all shapes, sizes, colors, hair textures, facial features. Hispanic is a whole range of people. And it's just like, out of all those peoples, and I know there were Hispanic actors back then who would have loved to get that role. Why couldn't you choose them? Why did you choose white people to just cosplay as their culture? It makes no sense. Well, I'm saying this, but it was the 1930s, like, or 1920s. Am I really shocked? I shouldn't be as shocked as I am. It just like, it honestly just makes me so irritated because I know there was a lot of Hispanic actors and actresses who would have killed this role and made the movie better and brought more substance to it, you know? So would I recommend this movie? No. And if you like this movie, I am fully judging you. Like, actually, like, I'm concerned. The Hollywood Revue. The Hollywood Revue was released in 1929, starring 25 of the screen's greatest stars at the time as themselves, and a 200-people chorus. It was directed by Charles Reisner and released by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, otherwise known as MGM. The Hollywood Revue. The Hollywood Revue is a comedy and musical film about nothing consistent. It's a literal review of random acts filmed together as a movie showcasing the biggest stars of the time. So for the literary element, I gave it a 1. For the directing element, a 2. For the visual element, a 4. For the editing element, a 4. For the sound element, a 3. My final rating was a 2.8, but let's just give it 2 stars. So let's start off positive. I thought there were some interesting shots for sure, but almost every single one was off center. I do want to talk about the overhead shots. I thought that was really cool. But the thing is, it was really hard to understand the words when they were singing, when they were speaking. And there was like absolutely no storyline. I would say I would have rather watched the ensemble scenes versus the individual acts that they had going on. They were honestly what made the film somewhat decent. I thought the dancing was great, but either fix the dancing to work the camera or fix the camera angles so we could see the dancing better, because we're missing a lot of things, a lot of details, and it looks messy. Going back to the individual acts, was that singing? Don't hate on me. Don't hate on me if like these this is like your jams from back then, but like maybe because the mics were bad or whatever. But some of those individual acts, I was like, Queen, are we holding a note here? Are we singing or are we yelling? Would I recommend this movie? No. Just because it truly felt utterly random, and I know that was the point. But I feel like you can have a random series of events in a film, but still have it interesting and captivating and make your audience want to watch. This just honestly felt like it would have been an amazing live theater moment. It just didn't translate well on film. The Patriot. The Patriot was released in 1928, starring, guys, I'm so sorry, I'm going to butcher these names, Emil Jannings as Cesar Paul I and Florence Vidor as Countess Osterman. It was directed by Ernest Lubitsch and released by Paramount. The Patriot is a dramatic film that takes place in 18th century Russia. The main character, Paulin, wants to protect his friend, the Mad King, but because of the horror of the king's acts, he feels he must remove him from the throne. And sadly, guys, this is the only Best Picture nominee that has been lost to time. So I can't really rate it or say whether I liked it or not. The only trace of its existence is a 2-minute long trailer. And so based on the trailer, I don't know, it personally doesn't look like my cup of tea. It's time to talk about the winner, The Broadway Melody. The Broadway Melody is a musical, romance, and drama film released in 1929, starring Charles King as Eddie Kearns, Anita Page as Queenie Mahoney, and Bessie Love as Hank Mahoney. It was directed by Harry Beaumont and released by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, so MGM. This was the first sound or talkie to win the Best Picture. It was also one of the first movies to show the early stages of Technicolor, but its black and white cut is the only one available today. Okay, let's get into the summary. It's a 1920s New York City. The Mahoney sisters, Queenie and Hank, have arrived from the West to New York City in order to pursue a better life in the industry. Felt that. Same here, sis. Same here. Queenie is the youngest of the two and has grown from an ugly duckling. I can't say that word. Queenie is the youngest of the two and has grown from an ugly duckling to a tall, beautiful blonde lady. Her beauty is so enticing that all of the men fall for her now. Hank is the shorter of the pair, but is very vocal and isn't afraid to speak her mind. I personally believe that the actual reason for the sisters moving to New York isn't for career purposes, but mainly because Hank wanted to be closer to her weirdo fiance, Eddie, who is also a part of the entertainment industry as an upcoming songwriter. Once Eddie meets up with the sisters, he sees Queenie and is entranced by her beauty and falls for her on the spot. Red flag. Hank, being entirely oblivious, is excited to share this new life with her fiancé and the possible new gig he got for them in a new musical he's working on. The sisters perform for the director of the new musical, who at first only wants Queenie to join the chorus because, she's blonde. But he's later convinced by Queenie to let the sister act perform as well. The director agrees, and the sisters join the musical. At the rehearsal before the musical opening, the sister act is cut from the opening number. Hank, who is absolutely furious, does her best to hold it together when Queenie is chosen to replace another chorus member who fell ill right before the performance. The thing is, though, for this act, the women are barely clothed, but like, this is like 1920s, barely clothed. So like they were pretty covered, but they were showing some skin. During the performance, Queenie captures the heart of the investors watching the rehearsal, and one in particular is relentless in instilling her affections. Jock Warner. Ew, ew, ew. He is like the OG red pill content guy. He is just absolutely a horrid person. Long story short, his character, he's a rich guy who can't take no as an answer. After Hank and Charles find out Queenie is seeing Mr. Warner, the pair lose their minds for entirely two different reasons. Hank wants to protect her sister's innocence, if you know what I mean, while Eddie wants Queenie for himself. And he confesses so to Queenie, who has started to feel the same. Queenie rejects the pair's desires to help her and rebels by continuing to see Mr. Warner. Just a quick commentary. I will say, while watching this movie, I thought Queenie was rejecting Eddie because she didn't want to hurt her sister. I was wrong. She had feelings for him, despite her sister. Anyways, back to the summary. It's Queenie's birthday, and Hank plans a surprise party and gift for her. But Mr. Warner plans an even more extravagant party for Queenie. After Hank finds out, she doesn't tell Queenie about the surprises that she had planned for her. Instead, she lets Queenie go to Mr. Warner's party, where she thinks she'll have a better time. At the party, Mr. Warner is placing more pressure on Queenie to respectfully get that cookie. Queenie is very uncomfortable, rightfully so, and tries to deflect Mr. Warner's affections. Feeling her slip away, Mr. Warner gives her a diamond bracelet, which Queenie gladly accepts. She returns home drunk and shows off her present to her sister, who is sad, not only about not celebrating her sister's birthday with her, but because she had mended a diamond ring for Queenie as well. But it was nothing compared to the diamond bracelet. Eddie's affections for Queenie begin to overflow, and one day he shows up in her dressing room and demands that she stop seeing Mr. Warner. Queenie refuses, but it's obvious the two share the same affection for each other, and Hank appears right as Queenie storms off to another Warner party. Eddie begins to passionately complain about Queenie's behavior to Hank, and Hank finally puts two and two together about how he feels about Queenie. She then desperately begs Eddie to go after Queenie, exploiting the affection she now realizes that's between them. She'd rather her sister be with someone she somewhat approves versus a rich jerk. Hank hits the nail in the coffin of her and Eddie's relationship by lying, saying that she feels nothing for Eddie. And let me tell you, Eddie did not have to be told twice. The two break up, and Eddie goes to run after Queenie, leaving a sobbing Hank behind. Mr. Warner has Queenie alone in his suite at another party, and he's blinding her with extravagant gifts and promises of a wealthy future with him. Queenie senses something is amiss and asks to leave the suite to join the party, but Mr. Warner refuses to let her go because, once again, he wants that cookie bad. As Queenie begins to fight back, Eddie appears to save the day. He and Mr. Warner tussle, giving Queenie the chance to escape. After it's safe, she and Eddie share a moment of passion and make their way home together, romantically at last. The film abruptly ends with a time skip where Queenie and Eddie are visiting Hank as a newly wedded couple. Hank is just happy to see her sister and reveals her new partner for her Vanderbilt act that will be leaving New York City to go on tour. So for the literary element, I rated this a 4. I do want to deep dive into Hank's character real quick. She was very verbal, which I found was very refreshing for the time period. Unfortunately, the men characters especially would react to her in a negative way. Especially when she spoke her mind, they would like shut her down, say shut up, like you're doing the most. Even Queenie was like chill. First of all, Hank had every reason to crash out. She moved to New York to be with her fiance and to jumpstart her career, only to leave New York careerless pretty much, and her sister now with her ex-fiance.
Wait a minute,
girl. That were me. Oh, no one would be happy. The way she reacted acted. I didn't like the narrative it was pushing, because at the end, her sister and her ex-fiance were visiting her. She didn't act bitter at all. If anything, she was just a little bit awkward. It was like a common theme in Hank's character where she would put other people's needs before hers, and it was considered something positive, which, I don't know, I think that's controversial. I feel like Hank deserved better. I think this message could have severely impacted the actress's choices as a character, but it didn't. She took that narrative, ran with it, but she gave it more depth and substance. You can truly see the complexity of Hank's character with the actress's choice. She was happy for her sister, but also mourning a future that could have been. And it was obvious in how she held her body language and how she delivered her lines. I also thought it was very subtle and a very complex watch. So, in other words, to be honest, Hank's character and Hank's actress was what made the movie great. For the directing element, I rated it a 3. This might be like beef with the writer, but also beef with the director, because hey, as a director, you can still kind of like change how characters are written or choose to highlight certain aspects of a character in a different way. And this director decided to go the opposite route for Queenie's character. I thought she was interesting to watch just because of how she navigated certain situations. I thought it was very realistic, especially as the younger sister and an ugly duckling turned pretty. But I will say, I didn't like how she kept telling Mr. Warner no. Like at first, when he first came to pursue her for a date. But then the next scene was us seeing her in the dressing room getting ready to go on the date with Mr. Warner. It's like, you said no, stand by it. Why are you getting dressed expecting for Mr. Warner to come to your door and then for you to go with him? I thought it was an odd moment and a disconnect. But once again, that could just be because of the misconception that women say no when they really want to say yes. I don't think that was the case with Queenie. It could have been a complex moment where Queenie really was saying no, but because of a promise of a better future, and because she was finally getting like proper male attention from not only a regular man but a wealthy man, I feel like he could have showed that thought process better, and I feel like the actress could have done that too. For the visual element, I gave it a 4. It was pretty decent, pretty average. I would say sometimes the characters were off center and the zoom and focus could be really bad. For the editing element, I gave it a 3. I thought it was a nice balance of dialogue and action, but guys, there were like these random reaction shots that were just way too long and didn't flow with the editing at all. And the sound was off during these reaction shots. It was just like their face like emoting. For the sound element, I rated it a 3. There was just a lot of static and the female voices were super hard to hear. But, I'm giving them grace because, this is the beginning of the talkies. Like, this is the beginning of the era. So, of course, like, there's going to be lots of static. There's going to be a lot of bumps in the road that they have to get through. My critique was the title cards, which they still had. They weren't used in a creative way. They were just used to establish the time and the place. They weren't exactly integrated into the film. It was kind of like, boom, scene, title card, time, place. Continue the movie. It didn't really flow well. So my final rating for the film is a 3.4, but let's just give it 3 stars. Some of my final thoughts is that this movie definitely romanticized infidelity. There were absolutely no consequences to the ex-fiance and the sister getting together, especially since Hank didn't have her crash out. She just accepted it and moved on. I will also say Mr. Warner made me very uncomfortable, which I liked because the movie didn't shy away from how much of a creep he was. Other films would probably like justify his behavior. This one didn't justify it at all, which I liked. The music numbers were very random, and if I'm being honest, they weren't good. I'm sorry. Like, even the sister act was terrible. And the dancers weren't good either. So I don't know how much of a musical this movie really was. So would I recommend this movie? Yes. I would recommend it for the storyline, not the musical aspect. Okay, guys, let's answer the question. Did Broadway Melody deserve the winning title. Yes, especially considering the other nominees. The only one that came close was Alibi, in my opinion. I think Broadway Melody won because the new invention of talkies or sound in the movies automatically corresponds to music. So it wasn't surprising that several of the nominees and the winner was considered a musical. But I feel like the Broadway Melody was the only one who incorporated story and music. It was way more balanced than others. Thank you guys so much for watching. Sorry about the lighting changes. Just ignore that. That's what happens when you film based off of the sun. Share your thoughts about this week's Best Picture winner and the nominees in the comments below. Next week, we'll be watching Quiet on the Western Front. That's a wrap. Until next time,